Aurelius Augustinus, also known as Saint Augustine, born November 13, 354, Tagaste, Numidia, now Souk Aras, Algeria, died August 28, 430, Hippo Regius, now Annaba, Algeria, at age 75. His notable works are The Confessions of Saint Augustine, The City of God. If none of his written works had survived, he would still have been a figure to be reckoned with, but his stature would have been more nearly that of some of his contemporaries. Saint Augustine's concept of the self is characterized by the inner self, which is known through the capacity for thought and possession of an intellect. Saint Augustine's concept of the self involves the exploration of the soul, mind, and consciousness, and the shifting emphasis between interiority and exteriority. Eternity, like God, man must seek to grow in virtue, knowledge, and love now by submitting his intellect and will, disordered by sin, to God's perfect charity. Many different ideas on what constitutes self have been proposed, including the self being an activity, the self being independent of the senses, the bundle theory of the self as a narrative center of gravity, and the self as a linguistic or social construct rather than a physical entity. No one claimed any of his possessions as his own, but everything was held in common. Upon this passage from the New Testament, the rule of Augustine established that the community must live in harmony, being of one mind and heart on the way to God. Augustine was acquainted with a version of Plato's philosophy, and he developed the Platonic idea of the rational soul into a Christian view in which humans are essentially souls, using their bodies as a means to achieve their spiritual ends. He was a renowned theologian and prolific writer. He was also a skilled preacher and rhetorician. He is one of the Latin fathers of the Church and, in Roman Catholicism, is formally recognized as a doctor of the Church. Definitions of Augustine of Hippo. Roman Catholic Church, one of the great fathers of the early Christian Church. After a dramatic conversion to Christianity, he became Bishop of Hippo Regius in North Africa. Saint Augustine emphasized man's need for grace. Augustine maintained as humans we are driven by love. It can drive us to do the right thing or the wrong thing. Cupiditas, the love of impermanent, changeable, earthly things. To follow this love is an error of will and entirely an individual's own fault. Saint Augustine is often portrayed holding a flaming heart to indicate his great personal charity and the fact that he preached love of neighbor as the way to serve God. In the emblem of the order, it reminds Augustine's followers that they must practice and preach charity toward God and neighbor. According to Augustine, the death of a human being is the separation of the soul from the body. While the body perishes and dissolves into the elements, the soul is immortal. The study of philosophy enhances a person's problem-solving capacities. It helps us to analyze concepts, definitions, arguments, and problems.